Hello, everyone. The documentary about Ibrahim Attahiru, the family reached out to me, and the wife said she wanted a documentary just to remember him, that his children can watch years later and know who, the father was. And I had to search deep to find a way to tell the story because we just focused on his life, not the political aspect. I tried to put it in, but she said, no, tell the story of the man. And that's what we tried to do. And I had to dig deep and remember that I had tons of family members, both from my father and my mother's side, who were either in the army or, in law enforcement, and their own stories and their own experiences. And also the fact that a lot of times when we think of the army, we just think of the guy with the gun that most times we've had cases where there's been some form of abuse of power. But when you move close and you see the sacrifices and, the training, the sacrifices, and all they had to do to ensure that we are safe as a people, it makes us just think again and just take a look and say that even though we've had incidences of not so good, not so pleasant experiences, but they are actually serving the country, and because they are working, we, to some extent, are safe. And this also with the hope that we can also support. I remember that after a lot of things didn't make it to, the doc. But I remember that a lot of times, anytime I see someone, I see an army or I see a soldier, I'm literally almost saying thank you, because a lot of times I've seen the mental constipation, the physical sacrifice that they've had to make. And, my previous documentary was on wives of alleged coup plotters and how they lost their husbands and what the challenges are. So a lot of times you also see their family and the effect that it has. It's not easy, and in our own way, even though, there are things that should be done right, but in our own way, we also need to appreciate the work of the Nigerian Armed Forces and the armed forces of any country, actually. Thank you.
Now, the concept of On Your Own was a documentary that has been years in the making. Actually, the idea was born out of my brother, Daniel Itegboje, the director of the film, who is right now writing the most important medical exam in his time now. And he couldn't be here with us. And it was born out of his curiosity while we studied at the University of Benin. And there were, like you saw in the documentary, these kids and a bunch of people who hung around the University of Benin main gate. And constantly, we had been passing them every day, and we had no idea who they were, where they came from, what their story was. And that got Daniel asking questions, and he started saying, where are these guys coming from? Do they have like some sort of organization? What's this all about? And for years, the inquiry began. And this documentary, up until we shot it last year, it had been in the works for, let's say, about 2 years. But we didn't get to shoot it until when Daniel met with Story Me, and the Story Me Academy had their program last year, and it came to fruition. And we had to, over the time we had been interacting with these guys, we had to get to the point where we started connecting with them without the camera. So we had to actually know their schedules, know where they would be, because they are actually kind of erratic individuals because they move around a lot, obviously, because they have no homes. So tracking them around was a bit of a challenge, but eventually we got into their own rhythm, and slowly and surely we're taken into their world. And On Your Own is a documentary that, as you saw, tells a story about brotherhood, friendship, drug abuse, and as well as the individuals that we see on constant basis that we might not know their stories, and now we could get a little glimpse.
All right, thank you very much. All right, can we please put your hands together for them? They deserve it. Do we have questions from the house? Okay. I see Auntie Kadaria here. Yeah, so I'll start with her. I'll take 2 more questions possibly after hers, and then we'll go into the screen of the next one. Please.
Thank you very much. Adiola, my question is for you. The Nigerian Army has a very conflicted relationship with the general public. It's not often that we hear words of sympathy for them, despite the fact that, the little bit of peace that we enjoy is majorly because of sort of the work that they're doing. I'm interested in your journey. At what point did it become obvious to you that, their story is a little bit more complex and more complicated than we sometimes think it is because of some of the atrocities that we see sometimes the more recent one, what's happened in Delta, et cetera, et cetera. So how did you arrive at a place where you saw them with a little bit more nuance than is generally possible with the rest of the population? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Like I said earlier, I'd done a documentary on wives of alleged coup plotters. So at some point, I had to have some form of interaction with them. So that already started the journey for me. And then the first set of shoots I had, I just kept on thinking, I need to find the story out of it. And it was in my discussion and conversation with some of the soldiers. There's a ton of things that I can't show, some of the things I cannot say. But it was in the course of having conversations and realizing that this is actually a human being who has chosen to do a job that he most likely is going to die, and he knows, and he has chosen to do it. And then I realized that, in the course of interacting, I had to interact with a ton of high-ranking soldiers and even the low-level ones. And I realized that a lot of them are actually very intelligent, very educated. And immediately you interact with them, they're already asking you questions, sizing you up. So a lot of times when we think of the army, we just think, oh, some of them are illiterate, very educated, some of them Harvard trained. And when I hear in the conversations and when I hear some of the things that they said personally, I think that was where it got me. But at first, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to think, I didn't know what to feel, but it was a good challenge and I was going to do it. And then, of course, personally, I now started remembering some of my uncles and when they talk about their experiences and how it scarred them. And you can see that it scarred them, but they always would be tough. And they're Yoruba men, so you expect that. But they'll always be tough. But I remember that at some point in time, I do have tons of family members who are soldiers. And they've had experiences. And there are some that I will never meet again because they are dead. So, that.
Yeah, my question is to the director of Ibrahim Attahiru. How many documentaries have you made? Sorry to have asked that question because I'm interested beyond what we are doing here.
I've done some, let me see. five, six,
Okay.
I think that
Okay, please.
but I missed
we
other
need to
small
discuss
ones.
after this. So I want to put somebody to study your work. I'm interested. You are so passionate in the work you are doing, but also we need to document what you are contributing. There are very few female directors, and you've gone into one of the rarest areas in film, which is documentary. Difficult. Femi Odugbemi promoted it. That's why a lot of people are interested in documentary. So I want to study you through my students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
One more question from the house. Okay, I will just ask one quickly to the cinematographer for OYO on your own. How were you guys able to get the boys to trust you well enough to open up and allow you into their world and their space?
Like I said, the documentary itself, before we got the cameras rolling, it took a while. And even when we had multiple meetings with them, we familiarized ourselves with them. So sometimes we just spent time, just chill or hung out. And we made sure that everyone that was like part of the production process was present with them. So no one was a stranger. And lo and behold, these guys, over time, they started looking out for us. Jokes aside, like our gear, stuff that we had, they were making sure that, okay, this stuff is like, they were like marking our guard. If anyone on the street was giving us trouble, they were sure to ward them off. So it was just a very organic thing that just happened after we spent time with them. And the truth is, most of them just want to be heard, and they just want, sometimes they don't get everyday conversations with people. Like you heard, they had to build their own family for themselves. So, like, over time, they got used to us. That's just a simple way.
All right.
to just put it.
Thank you for your answer. And to add there, do you have plans to take the film back to these people whose life you have been able to capture? Have they seen it in any way?
Yes, there's a work in progress on that, and will be done anytime soon.
All right. Thank you very much. That's good to know. Please, a round of applause for our filmmakers. You can take your seats.